Hi guys, in this video I'm going to be talking about Edward II and his two favourites, Piers Gaveston and Hugh Despenser the Younger. When I was learning about Edward II and I was reading about his favourites, I found this part of history particularly interesting. So I wanted to film a video just focusing on Edward II and his favourites. Edward II was the son of Edward I. He was born in Wales in 1284 and was made the first Prince of Wales in 1301. In 1307, Edward II was crowned King of England. Piers Gaveston, Earl of Cornwall, was born around 1284. Piers' father was a Gascon knight who served Edward I faithfully for many years, and because of this, the king ensured his family were well protected and provided an income and had security for the rest of their lives. Piers became a member of a royal household, and in 1300 he was moved to the royal court, which is where he met Edward I's son, who was the future King of England, Edward II. They were both around the age of 16 and they were very close. Some people believed they were more than just close friends and were actually lovers. Piers was extremely intelligent, ambitious and talented, and he had a big influence over Edward. In 1307, Edward had a massive argument with his father, and after this, Edward I banished Piers from England. But before he left, Edward II ensured he gave Piers loads of gifts. A few months later the king died and Edward II was made king. He immediately brought back Piers and made him Earl of Cornwall and chief advisor. Piers also acted as the king's regent while the king was away in France. Edward gave Piers land, money and even a wife. Piers married Edward's niece, Margaret, who was the daughter of Gilbert de Clare, who was the Earl of Gloucester. In hope to gain a relationship between France and England, Edward married Isabella, daughter of King Philip IV of France, and they were crowned together at Westminster Abbey in 1308. Piers had a very prominent role in Edward's coronation, which made his barons angry and jealous. They found Piers to be extremely arrogant, and Edward II paid so much attention to Piers that even Isabella's French relatives walked out. Everyone had had enough of Piers, and in 1311 the king was forced to agree to the election of the Ordainers. This is where a committee of earls, barons and bishops made rules for the management of the royal household. And one of the new rules demanded that Piers be sent into exile and never return. Edward said he would agree to all the new rules if Piers was allowed to stay, but of course the Ordainers didn't allow this. Piers was forced to leave the country, but it wasn't long until he was back again. Edward announced that Piers' exile had been unlawful and so just brought him back again. The barons had now really had enough, and the country was faced with civil war as the barons privately gathered their army. Edward and Piers were nearly captured in Newcastle, but they managed to escape and fled to Scarborough. With careful planning, the earls managed to isolate Piers at Scarborough Castle when the king left for York. Piers was besieged in Scarborough Castle by the Earls of Pembroke and Warwick. Piers agreed to surrender to the Earl of Pembroke, who guaranteed Piers safety and took him to Dedington in Oxfordshire. The Earl of Warwick, with the support of the Earls of Lancaster, Hereford and Arundel, sentenced Piers to death for treachery. On the 19th of June 1312, Piers was taken to Blacklow Hill, not far from Warwick, on a land that owned to Lancaster, and here he was beheaded. He would have been about 28 years old. Piers' body was left lying there to rot, but it was later buried at King's Landley in Hertfordshire on orders of the king. In 1823, a monument was erected on Blacklow Hill on the spot where Piers was thought to have been executed. The inscription on the monument describes Piers as the minion of a hateful king, beheaded by barons as lawless as himself. Piers Gaveston wasn't Edward's last close friend. In 1318, another one of Edward's favourites was made royal chamberlain. He was called Hugh Despenser the Younger. Hugh was a nobleman. His father was Hugh Despenser, also known as Hugh Despenser the Elder. He showed great loyalty to the king Edward I. In 1306, Edward I married Hugh the Younger to his eldest granddaughter, Eleanor de Clare. When Eleanor's brother, Gilbert de Clare, was killed in battle, a third of his inheritance passed to her, which meant that her husband, Hugh the Younger, became extremely rich. Edward II seemingly became just as interested in Hugh the Younger as he was with Gaveston. It is said that Edward did whatever Hugh wanted. Edward showered him with honours and titles. Hugh then began to dominate the English government and foreign policy. This angered the powerful nobles once again, who saw Hugh Despenser as a threat. In 1321, a group of barons took Hugh Despenser's lands from England and Wales, as well as his father's, and exiled both of them. But in 1322, Edward II just brought them both back. Instead, he executed and imprisoned all the English barons who had sent them away. Edward II then gave the barons' lands to Hugh the Younger, making him the richest man in the country. In 1324, Edward II went to war against Charles IV of France, and he put Despenser in charge of directing the war. Hugh forced many men and women to give him lands and money, and those that refused were imprisoned. During the war with France, Despenser did many things to anger Edward's wife, Queen Isabella, due to her French heritage. Despenser even removed Isabella's children from her care. Isabella allied herself with Roger Mortimer, who was a powerful English baron, and in 1326 they launched an attack on England. The king and Despenser were finally captured in the south of Wales. Despenser's father was captured and executed in Bristol, and the king was captured and taken to Kenilworth Castle. Hugh Despenser was hanged, drawn and quartered at Hereford. A few weeks after Despenser's execution, the king was forced to pass the throne on to his son Edward, who was crowned Edward III. Edward II was moved to Berkeley Castle, where it is believed that he was murdered. Isabella and Mortimer ruled in Edward III's name until 1330. Edward III then had Mortimer executed and his mother banished. Edward II is known to be one of England's worst kings, easily influenced by his favourites. He is known as the Second King. Thank you very much for watching this video. I really hope you found it interesting and you enjoyed it. If you did, please subscribe to see more from me, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.